Now, TikTok's future in the U.S. hangs in the balance, and it is now waiting for a federal appeals court to grant an emergency injunction to stop the app from being banned in the U.S. next month. A law demands the app's sale or ban because of links to the Chinese state. TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, hopes to have the legislation temporarily blocked to give the U.S. Supreme Court more time to consider the matter. Congressman Molinar, I want to start with you. ByteDance here is asking an appeals court to temporarily block the law that would force TikTok to be banned or divest, pending a review by the U.S. Supreme Court. And I want to ask you what ByteDance has said here. It said a delay will give the incoming administration time to determine its position, which could both moot the impending harms and the need for Supreme Court review. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's a legal strategy that ByteDance continues to deny the reality and try and thwart a law that's been Congress has enacted and signed into law by a president that gives them months to allow a divestiture. And we're coming up to a deadline. The president can always extend that deadline by law. But I don't think we should have a company affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party dictating what our courts decide relative to enforcing U.S. law.
Congressman Krishnamoorthi, I want to come to you now and take on one part of this statement that we saw from ByteDance, which is the question of the need for a Supreme Court review. ByteDance and some of your colleagues in Congress as well don't believe that this ban would actually stand up in court because they say it goes against free speech when there isn't actual proof of a threat. What is your response to that?
Well, I think that you just have to look at the DC Circuit Court of Appeals opinion that was written by a very ideologically diverse bench, including appointees of Barack Obama, Ronald Reagan, and Donald Trump. And they unanimously agreed, Sumi, that there might be a right to free speech, but there's no right to harm our national security. The First Amendment contains no such right. And so this particular law was crafted in a way to mitigate the threat associated with CCP control or Chinese Communist Party control of ByteDance and the data of 170 million Americans while preserving the free speech rights of Americans. So at this point, ByteDance needs to accept the law and divest itself of TikTok.
Congressman Krishnamoorthi, I just want to follow up on one thing you said. The argument being made is that there's no real proof of this threat. Would you be in favor of declassifying, for example, some of the information that you and your colleagues have access to show what you believe the threat is here from ByteDance?
Sure. I have no problem with declassifying information so long as we don't necessarily somehow inadvertently disclose sources or methods of collection. But at the end of the day, I think ByteDance's argument and TikTok's argument seems to be one that my friend John Molinar, our chairman, has made before, which is somehow they want us to show a smoking gun. And unfortunately, the problem is that where there's a smoking gun, there's usually a dead victim, and nobody wants that to happen here. There's a loaded gun. We know that they have, unfortunately, access to the data of 170 million Americans. The court pointed out the hybrid threat, the unique hybrid threat associated with ByteDance, that it is basically an instrument of the Chinese Communist Party, and that is why they upheld this law.
Congressman Molinar, I want to give you the opportunity to comment on that as well.
Well, I just want to say that the Chinese Communist Party actually appoints members to the board of directors for ByteDance. And when you consider this is the same Chinese Communist Party that is putting in prison people who speak out against the government in Hong Kong, I think it's very clear we don't want them to have access, unfettered access, in ways that they can manipulate the algorithms on people's devices and that can steal Americans' data. We've seen whether it's different hacks from the Chinese Communist Party. They're very aggressive in this area. And it's important to note that TikTok is very popular, but we just think that TikTok should be owned by an American company or a company that's based in a non-adversarial nation.
Okay.
So that means not Iran, not North Korea, and not Russia, not China. And those are simply the parameters of the law. And I believe it's vital to our national security to protect Americans' data, as well as not allow them to be manipulated by the Chinese Communist Party.
Congressman Molinar, can I ask you about the incoming administration? President-elect Donald Trump said back in September, all of those who want to save TikTok in America vote for Trump. And we saw his incoming national security advisor, Mike Waltz, tell Fox on Friday that Donald Trump, quote, wants to save TikTok. We absolutely need to allow the American people to have access to that app, but we have to protect our data as well. Do you think that we could see the incoming president ask Congress to repeal a ban if it goes into effect?
You know, my belief is that President Trump is a very good negotiator and that he will help facilitate this divestiture in a way that preserves TikTok, but under new management, under new ownership. And to me, that would be a win-win scenario. And I believe that's the course he'll pursue. He wants to protect Americans' national security and our data privacy. And at the same time, he recognizes that we want to have competition in this space, but do it in a way that doesn't give a foothold to our adversaries.
Congressman Krishnamoorthi, just one more question for you. Are you concerned about the potential for retribution, that we could see other countries forcing a divestment merely because it is a company that's owned by, for example, the U.S., a rival country?
No, because China is already doing that. The CCP has already done that to the U.S. That is the irony of this, Sumi, which is that they, for a very long time, have prohibited American social media platforms from operating in China, but we have not done the same with regard to the CCP. And so this is just a farce. And now we are acting upon a very real national security threat. 360 members of Congress voted in favor of this. Now, obviously, President Biden signed off on it. A court of appeals has also upheld it. So all three branches have now agreed that this law needs to stand. And now it's time for ByteDance to just plain accept it.
Okay, that was a conversation we had earlier with Republican Representative John Molinar and Democrat Representative Raja Krishnamoorthi, the chairman and ranking member from the House Select Committee